Hey guys, Mr. Ideas Expounder here. In last video we discussed some strange facts about Albert Einstein. Today we are going to talk about some interesting facts about Sir Isaac Newton. He was born on Christmas Day 1642. However, this was according to the Julian calendar in use at that time. According to the modern Gregorian calendar, which didn't take effect in British Empire until 1752, he would have been born on January 4, 1643. Newton was born premature, with his mother noting that her newborn could have fit into a quart mug. The apple tree story never happened. We all know the famous story of how Newton was resting under a tree when an apple fell on his head, creating a famous Eureka moment and leading to his laws of gravitation. However, this is all apocryphal. By Newton's own admission, he merely saw an apple fall from a tree while walking through the garden, although some believe this story to be a myth as well. The tree is real though. In fact, as soon as the story became popular, a debate raged over which apple tree was the real one. Nowadays, descendant of the original tree can be found at Cambridge. A piece of original apple tree was even loaned by the Royal Society to NASA, who took it into space. He hated his stepfather and grew to resent his mother for marrying him. Newton even once confessed to threatening my father and mother Smith to burn them and house over them. Perhaps the most surprising fact about Newton is that he was a firm believer in alchemy. One of his greatest ambitions was to find the philosopher's stone, the secret to turning common metal into gold. Beyond alchemy, Newton dabbled into a number of French and occult studies and practices, which resulted in his belief that the world could end as early as 2060, that humans could perhaps literally speak with angels, and that the lost city of Atlantis may in fact be real. Newton never married and scarcely sought the romantic company of women. The famous French philosopher Voltaire once wrote of Newton that he was never sensible to any passion, was not subject to common frailties of mankind, nor had any commerce with women, a circumstance which was assured me by the physician and surgeon who attended him in his last. In fact, many scholars to this day believe that Newton died a virgin. Among the surviving Newton documents is a list that he wrote as a 19-year-old enumerating 48 sins he wished to confess. These sins include punching my sister and robbing my mother's box of plums and sugar. In 1665, Newton first demonstrated the dispersive prism phenomenon, in which a beam of light becomes separated into its component colors when filtered through a glass prism. Newton has history's most valuable tooth. One of his teeth was sold in 1816 at auction for approximately $3,600. In today's term, that's about $35,000, prompting Guinness World Record to declare its most valuable tooth in the world. He was a major investor in the South Sea Company, whose principal business was in the slave trade. When the company collapsed, he lost, according to his niece, about £20,000, which would be the worth about $3 million today. He was notoriously fiery in debates over his work, even suffering a nervous breakdown and secluding himself from public life following one such debate in 1678. He was master of royal mint. Newton took this job very seriously and personally pursued counterfeiters. Back then, counterfeiting was considered high treason and punishable by death. Newton apprehended and successfully prosecuted many counterfeiters. Newton even disguised himself as the common tavern patron in order to catch counterfeiters in the act. Also during his time with the Royal Mint, Newton moved the British pound from silver standard to the gold standard, thus changing the course of world currency immeasurably. Although he was one of the history's foremost men of science, Newton also had a deep yet complicated relation with Christianity and published many writings on the Bible. He could have been a farmer. Newton was born to a farming family, so the initial plan was for him to take over the farm when he was old enough. Newton tried, but given his lack of interest in the field, was a very poor farmer. Eventually, his uncle managed to convince his mother to let him go to college. Newton was also a politician. He served as a member of parliament representing Cambridge on two separate occasions. However, as was the case with farming, he had no interest in this. Several accounts mention the fact that Newton only said one thing while in parliament, asking for a window to be closed. His arch-rival, scientist Robert Hooke, claimed that he came up with laws of gravitation and Newton stole his work. Their rivalry lasted well after Hooke's death, after which Newton became president of the Royal Society and used his position to obscure Hooke's work as much as possible. One history says that Newton even had all portraits of Hooke destroyed. Despite his feud with Hooke, Newton was also friends with many other influential scientists of that time. Examples include Christopher Wren, one of the most successful architects of all time, and Edmond Halley, who paid for the publication of Newton's Principia Mathematica. His claim to the invention of calculus was hotly contested in academic circles at the time, with many claiming that German mathematician Gottfried Leibniz actually deserved the credit. Ultimately, an investigation by Royal Society of London and overseen by Newton himself stated that Newton invented the field. After his body was exhumed and his hair was found to contain mercury, some suspect that this was the result of his experiments in alchemy and that mercury poisoning may account for eccentric habits that he developed later in life. So guys, thanks for watching the video. Subscribe for more Ideas Expounder.